It is very daunting to come back to school after having been away from the world of academia for an extended period of time. Techniques and methods change, and the philosophy of life alters from generation to generation. I now find myself thrown into a class of students who have an altered way of doing things, and through my disparate attitudes not only from an older generation, but also of a different culture, it is often difficult to find common ground. I have never really thought to analyse differences in race, culture and class before I was required to in such detail in recent weeks, and I have heard many viewpoints and information that have helped me to see how these differences impact lives. Most importantly, I have seen how they impact the educational environment of schools and how it is changing. As future educators, we need to be aware of how they impact not only the learning environment, but also how others' attitudes to differences can shape our future. Disparity of class is not new to me. In fact, the whole social structure in the United Kingdom is based on class as it relates to heritage of birth, which is a restricting structure that you cannot escape, and a kind of inheritance we carry with us as individuals. I have always been brought up to understand that no matter how much money you have, you cannot change the class you were born into, although through the marriage of Prince William to Kate Middleton there has been a softening of class boundaries. There is also another restricting aspect of living in the United Kingdom. Each country that makes up the nation is not at peace with being part of a larger whole, and that creates tension and prejudice between the regions. Each country considers themselves separate, and there are many loyalists that still advocate for independence. There is particular animosity between Scotland and England, which dates back hundreds of years and still continues today. I mention this particularly because as a young girl, my father's job took us there to live. From when I was about 2, I grew up near the west coast of Scotland in a town called Kilmarnock. Through living in a country that feels animosity towards the place of my birth, I have had first-hand experience of prejudice. As a result of various recent discussions about the complexity of who we are and how we cannot judge a person on surface value, I see that we all need to recognise that everyone is made up of many different parts that are not always visible. As a child, we tend to be aware when something is not as it should be, but recognising it as prejudice is beyond the realm of understanding. I knew I was different and it bothered me, but I was unable to externalise my feelings or able to explain how I felt. I was unaware of this resentment against the English, and because of it I was teased about my accent and often mimicked by other students. Most would not play with me at break time, influenced no doubt by their parents' loyalist attitudes, and I was certainly never invited over after school. Anyone who has been singled out and made to feel different through something that is beyond their control can relate to the fact that it took a part in shaping my childhood. I was afraid to speak out during class in case other students made fun of me, and unfortunately there were a number of teachers who also held this prejudice. These teachers allowed their personal beliefs to affect their teaching, and they would either ignore me and respond only if put in a situation where they were forced to, or else they were more harsh than necessary. During my elementary school years, corporal punishment still was in effect, and I can remember one teacher in particular, Mrs. McGrath, who sought out opportunities to humiliate me and gave me the belt in front of the whole class because I was talking to the student next to me. Through the power of technology, I was able to revisit the house I grew up in, and I could even travel the route I took to school. When I zoomed in on an image of the school where I'd spent those unhappy years, I had a physical reaction which made me realise I had suppressed these unpleasant experiences and denied their existence. I see now that the behaviour of those who judged me was a reaction to something that was much bigger than me, and something all-encompassing that colours our views and judgments, which is the fear of cultural invasion, and is something that many people have experienced either as a recipient or as a protagonist. When I turned 10, we moved back to England, and I attended middle school and high school in a town just outside London. The town was small, and there was little diversity in the schools I attended. There were no other cultures in my middle school, and when I left there to go to an all-girls high school, I not only had zero exposure to gender differences, but there were very few girls who were not white, and so I also had little experience of cultural differences. I had no reference in which to think about diversity, and the subject was never discussed. So although I have experience of prejudice, my first real exposure to cultural diversity was when I came to the United States, where things were vastly dissimilar to the environment I grew up in, and difference is a focus of everyday life. I do feel proud to have been brought up in the United Kingdom and consider it part of my identity because there is so much history associated with the country and so many sites and traditions that make it unique. From all the experiences I have had, and I have learned one thing that stands out beyond the rest. We need to be cognizant of the fact that the world is ever-changing, and if we wish to be an accepted part of society today, we must be prepared to change with it, to constantly adapt our way of thinking, and to also revise how we communicate. I enjoy experiencing different cultures living in the United States, a country built on differences, while still maintaining my British heritage. I feel that because of my experiences as a child, and the emotions I went through because I was considered different, I am more aware of the impact of differences in their many shapes and forms, and that we have to find a way for us all to live without the conflict caused by prejudice. We need to try and solve the problems that keep us in conflict and work towards a resolution of unity.